On a rainy afternoon, an unexpected reunion brought back memories that time couldn't erase. Between kept secrets, glances that say more than words, and choices that can change everything, they will discover if love can resist the obstacles that life imposes. A story of reunions, sacrifices, and destiny. Prepare to feel every moment. Subscribe, like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The autumn rain fell mercilessly over the small town of Val das Serras. Helena watched the drops slide down the window of Café Primavera, while absent-mindedly stirring the spoon in her chamomile teacup. The sweet aroma mixed with the strong scent of freshly ground coffee that filled the cozy atmosphere. The conversations around her were just a distant murmur to her ears. She was lost in thoughts about the restoration project of the old municipal theater. The doorbell chimed, bringing with it a gust of cold wind and some yellowed leaves. Helena instinctively looked up and saw when he entered, tall, broad shoulders under a soaked coat, dark hair stuck to his forehead. There was something familiar in the way he shook his hair or in the half-smile he offered to the waitress. A strange sensation ran down her spine, as if time had taken a leap backward. "A strong coffee, please." His voice was deeper than she remembered, but still carried that peculiar cadence. Helena quickly lowered her gaze when he turned his face in her direction. Her heart accelerated without permission, her hands suddenly trembling around the hot cup. "Did you see who that is?" whispered a woman at the table next to her. "It's Lucas Mendonça, the businessman who bought the Almeida lands. They say he used to live here as a child." The air suddenly seemed rarefied. Lucas, the boy who shared secrets with her by the river, who taught her to make paper boats, who promised to return one day. The same one who left without a goodbye, leaving only a short note and a childhood of unfinished promises. Helena stood up hastily, spilling some tea on the table. She needed to get out of there before he recognized her. She wasn't prepared for this encounter, not after 15 years. She threw some bills on the table and walked quickly toward the door, keeping her face partially hidden by her loose hair. A few steps from the exit, her cell phone slipped from her bag, falling with a dull thud on the wooden floor. Before she could bend down to pick it up, a masculine hand was already reaching for it. "I think this is yours," Lucas said, extending the device. Helena raised her face, meeting those green eyes that had so often inhabited her teenage dreams. Recognition wasn't immediate in his eyes, but when it came, it completely transformed his expression. "Helena?" His voice sounded incredulous. "Helena Martins?" "Hello, Lucas," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady while taking the phone. "It's been a long time." A dense silence settled between them, as if 15 years of untold stories demanded space in that small cafe. Lucas opened his mouth to say something, but was interrupted by the insistent ring of his own phone. "I need to take this," he said, seeming genuinely annoyed. "But it would be good to talk." "Of course," Helena replied automatically, although an inner voice screamed for her to flee from there. "I'll be at the Spring Festival tomorrow in the Central Square," he said, already answering the call. "See you there?" Helena nodded and quickly left for the rainy street, not caring about the drops that now soaked her light coat. What had just happened? Lucas Mendonça had returned, and with him all the memories she thought she had buried along with her teenage dreams. Helena's apartment was a few blocks from the cafe in an old building overlooking the Central Square. She entered soaked, leaving a trail of water down the wooden hallway. She dropped her bag on the sofa and walked to the large living room window. Down below, the square was being decorated for the spring festival. Even under the persistent rain, colorful banners, white tents, and a small stage already set up promised the traditional event that marked the change of season. Helena was an architect and restorer, specialized in historic buildings. She had returned to her hometown 3 years ago, after a failed marriage in São Paulo, and a promising career that seemed empty of meaning. Val das Serras represented a new beginning, roots, and the chance to work on what she really loved, preserving history through architecture. The reunion with Lucas shook her foundations. She had overcome the pain of his departure, or at least that's what she told herself. But simply seeing him again awakened sensations dormant for years. Lucas had been her first love, her first disappointment. The rich boy who played with the governess's daughter, ignoring the social barriers that adults tried to impose. The teenager who promised to run away with her when they turned 18, but who left alone at 16, when his father sent him to a boarding school abroad. The phone rang, bringing Helena back to the present. It was Sophia, her best friend and partner in the architecture firm. "How was the meeting with the mayor?" Sophia asked, without beating around the bush. "Rescheduled for tomorrow," Helena replied, still distracted. "Sophia, you won't believe who I met today." "Who?" "Lucas Mendonça." The silence on the other end of the line was significant. Sophia knew the whole story. All the tears shed. All the years Helena had spent waiting for a letter, a call, any sign. "Lucas is back?" Sophia finally asked. "What does he want here after so long?" "It seems he bought the Almeida lands and his family's mansion, from what I understood." "The abandoned mansion on the hill? The one that's about to be listed as a historical heritage site?" Helena felt a shiver. The Mendonça mansion was one of the projects she most desired to restore. It was an imposing construction from the early 20th century, with unique architecture that blended European influences and regional elements. It had been abandoned for years, since the family had moved permanently abroad. "He invited me to the spring festival tomorrow," Helena confessed, sitting on the sofa. "And are you going?" "I don't know. Maybe." But deep down, she already knew the answer. Curiosity was stronger than resentment, and there were so many unanswered questions. The night passed slowly, lulled by the rain that gave no respite and by broken dreams where a green-eyed boy built paper boats, only to watch them sink in the current. The morning brought a shy sun that struggled to make its way through stubborn clouds. Helena woke with the soft light entering through the bedroom window and spent a few minutes observing the ceiling, thinking about yesterday's reunion. Part of her wanted to ignore Lucas's invitation, pretend she hadn't seen him, that he didn't exist. Another part, however, yearned for answers, to understand the reasons behind the abandonment. The Spring Festival was a tradition in Val das Serras. The central square was transformed into a celebration space, with typical food stalls, local crafts, live music, and folk dances. It was an event that brought together the entire community, from the youngest to the oldest, in a celebration of the renewal brought by spring. Helena chose a simple dress, light green cotton, that highlighted her brown eyes and complemented her naturally tanned skin. She pinned her brown hair in an unpretentious bun, leaving some loose strands to frame her face. She didn't want to seem like she was trying too hard. The square was already full when she arrived. The sun had finally defeated the clouds, turning the puddles into small mirrors that reflected the blue of the sky. The aroma of home cooking spread through the air, mixing with the perfume of the season's first flowers. Helena greeted acquaintances, stopped to talk with former teachers, avoiding anxiously looking around for Lucas. It was when she was examining a craft stand that she felt a presence behind her. "You came." Lucas's voice sounded close to her ear, causing an involuntary shiver. Helena turned slowly, meeting those green eyes that time hadn't erased from her memory. He wore a light blue shirt that contrasted with his tanned skin, and his dark hair seemed more tamed than the day before. "I promised I would come," she replied, trying to keep her voice casual. Lucas smiled, a smile that didn't completely reach his eyes. There was something contained in him, an invisible barrier that didn't exist when they were children. "It's been so long," he said, studying her face as if searching for traces of the girl he had known. "You're different." 15 years do that to people?" Helena shot back, a hint of resentment escaping in her voice. Lucas's smile wavered for an instant. "Fair enough," he conceded. "You're right. Can we talk somewhere quieter?" Helena hesitated, but curiosity won over caution. She nodded, following him through the crowd to a wooden bench under a still flowerless ipay tree on the edge of the square. "So, you came back," she began, when they sat side by side, at a safe distance from each other. "I came back," he confirmed, looking at his own hands. "The family company is expanding, and Val das Serras has potential for our new investments." "The family company," Helena repeated. "The same company that had torn him away from her 15 years ago. Your father still runs everything?" A shadow passed over Lucas's face. "My father passed away 2 years ago," he replied, his voice lower. "I've been running the business since then." "I'm sorry," Helena said sincerely. Despite everything, she didn't wish ill on his family. "And you?" Lucas asked, changing the subject. "I heard you became an architect. You were always good with drawings." The fact that he knew about her profession surprised her. Had he asked about her over the years? "Yes, I specialized in historic building restoration," she explained. I have a small office here in town with my friend Sophia. Sophia Alves, the freckled girl who was always following us around? Helena smiled at the memory. Sophia had always been their shadow, determined not to be left out of the adventures. The same one. Now she's a brilliant architect and my partner. The conversation flowed more easily after that, navigating the safe waters of shared childhood memories. They talked about the peculiar teachers they had, about the expeditions to the river, about the games on the dirt road. They carefully avoided mentioning his departure or the years of silence that followed. It was when traditional music began to play, announcing the start of folk dancing, that the moment was interrupted. A stunning woman approached, her high heels making a rhythmic sound against the square's pavement. She had impeccably styled blonde hair, a red dress that hugged her perfect curves, and a calculated smile on her painted lips. "Lucas, darling, I was looking everywhere for you," she said, completely ignoring Helena's presence. Lucas seemed momentarily uncomfortable, standing up from the bench. "Camilla, this is Helena Martins, a childhood friend," he introduced, hesitating in his choice of words. "Helena, this is Camilla Vasconcelos, my inseparable companion," Camilla completed, extending a hand with perfectly manicured nails to Helena. Helena felt a pang in her chest. Of course Lucas would have someone. Men like him, rich, handsome, powerful, never stayed alone. She forced a polite smile and shook the offered hand. "Pleasure to meet you," she said, standing up as well. "I need to go now. It was good to see you, Lucas." "Helena, wait!" Lucas called, but she was already walking away, blending into the crowd gathering to watch the dances. The rest of the afternoon passed like a blur for Helena. She participated in activities mechanically, smiling when necessary, responding when approached. But her mind was stuck on the bench under the IPA tree and the feeling that some stories simply don't have a happy ending. The days that followed brought an apparently normal routine. Helena dove into work, focusing on pending projects and the rescheduled meeting with the mayor, which finally took place. It was during this meeting that Lucas's name came up again. "Mr. Mendonça showed great interest in preserving the city's historical heritage," the mayor commented, adjusting his glasses on his nose, "especially his family's mansion. I spoke very highly of your work, Helena." Her heart skipped a beat. "The Mendonça mansion is an architectural jewel," she replied, maintaining a professional tone. "It would be a fascinating project." "Good that you think so," the mayor smiled, "because Mr. Mendonça specifically requested that you lead the restoration project." Helena felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Working on the Mendonça mansion was a professional dream, but it would mean constantly interacting with Lucas. After the encounter at the festival, where he was clearly accompanied, she had decided to keep her distance. "Is there any problem?" the mayor asked, noticing her hesitation. "No, none," Helena forced a smile. "It would be an honor to take on this project." Upon leaving City Hall, Helena breathed deeply the fresh morning air. Spring was advancing, and the square's trees were beginning to show small green buds. She walked slowly to the office, trying to organize her thoughts. Sophia was bent over a floor plan when she entered. "So, did the mayor approve our proposal for the theater?" she asked, without looking up from the paper. "He approved," Helena replied, leaving the folder on the table. "And he recommended us for another project." Something in her voice made Sophia look up. "What project?" "The Mendonça mansion." Sophia's eyes widened, letting the pencil fall. "Lucas's mansion you accepted?" "It's an important project for the city, Sophia." Helena defended herself, though she wasn't even convinced. "And for our office." "And it has nothing to do with the fact that you never completely got over that summer before he left?" Helena sat heavily in her chair. "I did get over it," she protested without much conviction. "But I confess I was curious about why he specifically asked for me." "There's only one way to find out," Sophia shrugged. "When do we start?" The first visit to the mansion was scheduled for the following week. Helena prepared professionally, gathering historical information about the construction, studying the period's architecture, and separating measuring equipment. Personally, however, she felt completely unprepared. The mansion sat atop a gentle hill, surrounded by once magnificent gardens, now overgrown with weeds. The construction itself was imposing. 3 floors of stone and wood, with large arched windows, elaborate wrought iron balconies, and a central tower that stood out against the blue sky. Years of abandonment had covered its beauty with a patina of decay, but it was still possible to glimpse the original grandeur. Helena parked her car at the gravel entrance, where a black Jeep was already parked. Her heart accelerated seeing Lucas waiting on the front porch, wearing jeans and a simple white shirt that the gentle wind stirred. Alone, without the stunning blonde from the festival. "Good morning," he greeted, coming down the steps to receive her. "Thank you for coming." "It's my job," she replied, trying to sound professional while getting her folder and equipment from the back seat. Lucas made a motion to help her, but Helena quickly closed the car, indicating she could carry everything herself. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. "So," Lucas began as they climbed the porch steps, "where do you want to start?" "I need to assess the structure first," Helena explained, entering the professional mode that always saved her in difficult situations. "Check the foundations, the condition of the wood, possible infiltrations. Then, make a detailed historical survey of each room to plan the restoration respecting the original characteristics." Lucas nodded, opening the main door. The mansion's interior was even more impressive than the exterior. A large entrance hall with worn marble floors, a majestic staircase leading to the upper floors, crystal chandeliers covered with cobwebs and dust. "The house has been closed since my father took the family abroad," Lucas explained as they advanced through the hall. "He always said we would return someday, but we never came back. Not all together, at least." There was a melancholy in his voice that made Helena look at him more carefully. The Lucas she had known in adolescence was vibrant, full of dreams and plans. This man seemed to carry an invisible weight on his shoulders. "Why now?" she asked, unable to contain her curiosity. "Why return after so long?" Lucas walked to one of the windows, looking at the abandoned gardens. "My father left specific instructions in his will," he replied after a moment. "The mansion couldn't be sold, but should be restored and transformed into a cultural center for the city. A final act of redemption, perhaps." "Redemption?" Lucas turned to face her, his green eyes more serious than she had ever seen them. "My father wasn't an easy man, Helena. You know that better than most." Helena nodded slowly. Lucas's father, Roberto Mendonça, had always been an intimidating figure. A ruthless businessman who saw his son's friendship with the governess's daughter as an unacceptable distraction. It was he who sent Lucas to boarding school in Switzerland, abruptly separating them. "He never approved of our friendship," she said quietly. "It wasn't just our friendship he didn't approve of," Lucas replied with a bitter smile. "It was anything that could divert my focus from the family business, including my own dreams." Helena felt a pang of compassion. She had never considered that Lucas had also been a victim of circumstances, always imagining him departing happily for his new glamorous life abroad, forgetting her effortlessly. "You never wrote," she murmured, the hurt of years escaping in her words. Lucas frowned, confused. "I wrote several letters in the first months," he stated. "I never received a response." It was Helena's turn to be perplexed. "I never received any letters." They stared at each other, understanding slowly emerging in their eyes. Roberto Mendonça, of course. The controlling man who wouldn't allow his son to maintain ties with the past he was trying to erase. "He intercepted our letters," Lucas concluded, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. The silence that followed was loaded with lost possibilities, with a story that could have been completely different. "We need to work," Helena finally said, returning to the present. "There's much to be done here." Lucas nodded, respecting her need for emotional distance. They spent the rest of the morning touring the mansion, with Helena taking detailed notes and photographs, while Lucas occasionally shared memories of specific rooms. It was in Lucas's old room, now empty except for a disassembled bed and a dusty desk, that she found something unexpected. A small paper boat, yellowed by time, carefully preserved inside a glass box on the desk. "You kept it," she whispered, touching the glass with her fingertips. Lucas, who was watching from the doorway, approached. "It was the last one we made together," he explained, his voice soft. "The night before I left, you said it would carry our dreams down the river to the sea, and from there to the whole world." Helena felt her eyes burn with contained tears. That specific memory was engraved in her heart, the two of them sitting by the river, the setting sun casting golden reflections on the water, the promise that, no matter the distance, they would always be part of each other's lives. "I take this with me wherever I go," Lucas continued, his voice almost a whisper. "It's my reminder that there was a time when I believed everything was possible. The moment was interrupted by the shrill sound of a cell phone. Lucas closed his eyes for an instant, as if asking for patience before answering. "Yes, Camilla," he said, stepping away a few paces. "No, I'm still at the mansion. Yes, with the architect. I don't know what time. Look, let's talk later, okay?" Helena pretended to be busy with her notes, but each word of the conversation hit her like small arrows. Of course, Camilla, the inseparable companion. For a moment, she had forgotten that Lucas wasn't available. "Sorry about that," Lucas said when he hung up. "Where were we?" "I already have everything I need for today," Helena replied, closing her folder. "I'll prepare a preliminary report and a restoration proposal to present next week." "Helena," Lucas called when she was already heading to the door. "About what we discovered today, about the letters." "It's the past, Lucas," she interrupted him, forcing a smile. "We were children. Life moved on." Without waiting for an answer, Helena left the room and quickly went down the stairs. She needed fresh air, distance, time to process everything she had just discovered. The intercepted letters changed the narrative she had constructed during years, but they didn't change the present. Lucas had Camilla, and she had her career. Some stories simply weren't destined to have a happy ending. In the days that followed, Helena immersed herself in work as a way to avoid thinking about Lucas and the revelations at the mansion. Together with Sophia, she developed a detailed restoration plan that respected the original architecture, but incorporated modern elements necessary for transforming the space into a cultural center. Life seemed determined to put them in each other's path, however. At the municipal market, where Helena bought fresh fruit on Saturdays, at the local bookstore, where both apparently shared a taste for historical novels, and even on the trail to the lookout, a path they used to walk in adolescence to watch the sunset. In this last encounter, the coincidence was so surprising that Helena couldn't help but laugh. "This is getting ridiculous," she commented when they came across each other at the curve of the path leading to the top. Lucas smiled, that crooked smile that always disarmed her. "Fate has a peculiar sense of humor," he replied, looking at the sky that was beginning to tinge with orange. "I used to come here to think. Is it still a good place for that?" "The best," Helena confirmed, continuing to climb the trail. Lucas fell into step beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Can we declare a temporary truce and watch the sunset together?" he proposed. "Like old times. I promise not to talk about the past or the mansion." Helena considered refusing, but something in his expression stopped her. There was a vulnerability there, a silent request she couldn't ignore. "All right," she agreed, "but no personal questions." They reached the top of the hill, where a natural lookout offered a spectacular view of the city and the surrounding fields. The sun began its descent behind the distant mountains, painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and purple. They sat side by side on a fallen log that served as an improvised bench, watching in silence as the natural spectacle unfolded before them. It was peaceful, almost as if the years hadn't passed, as if they were still those teenagers full of dreams and possibilities. "Who would have thought?" Lucas murmured, when the last ray of sun disappeared on the horizon. "What?" "That we would still remember the way here after so long." Helena smiled slightly. "Some things aren't forgotten, no matter how much time passes." The silence that followed was full of unspoken meanings. Night began to fall, bringing with it a cooler breeze. "It's getting cold," Lucas observed, taking off his jacket and offering it to her. "Here." "I don't need—" "Please," he insisted. "You always forgot to bring a coat here, remember? Some things really don't change." Helena accepted the jacket, wrapping herself in the soft fabric that carried Lucas's discreet perfume. It was a simple gesture, but loaded with intimacy, an echo of a shared past. "Thank you." They stayed a few more minutes watching the first stars appear in the sky before starting the descent. The trail was darker now, illuminated only by the light of the crescent moon. In a particularly steep stretch, Lucas extended his hand to help her. Helena hesitated for a moment before accepting it. The contact sent an electric current through her arm, a vivid reminder of the chemistry that had always existed between them. When they reached the foot of the hill where their cars were parked, Lucas was reluctant to let go of her hand. "Helena," he began, his voice low, "I know I promised not to talk about the past, but there's something I need to say." Her heart accelerated. But before Lucas could continue, bright headlights illuminated the place. A red sports car parked abruptly beside them, and Camilla got out, her high heels completely inappropriate for the location. "Lucas," she exclaimed, ignoring Helena. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Did you forget we have the charity dinner today?" Lucas abruptly let go of Helena's hand as if he had been caught doing something wrong. "Camilla, I lost track of time," he apologized, clearly uncomfortable. Camilla finally looked at Helena, her eyes narrowing as she noticed the jacket she was wearing. "Helena, isn't it?" she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I didn't know architects worked so late." "We weren't working," Helena replied calmly, taking off the jacket and returning it to Lucas. "Just reminiscing about old times. Thank you for the loan, Lucas." Without waiting for an answer, Helena got in her car and left, leaving Lucas with a frustrated expression and Camilla with a calculating look. In the rearview mirror, Helena saw when Camilla possessively linked her arm with Lucas's, pulling him toward the red car. Something in her chest hurt, a sensation she hadn't felt in years. Jealousy? No, it was more complex than that. It was like watching a door close once again before she even had a chance to discover what was on the other side. The following week brought the official presentation of the Mendonça Mansion restoration project. Helena spent days preparing plans, 3D renderings, and a detailed work schedule. The presentation would be held at City Hall with the presence of the mayor, the culture secretary, and, of course, Lucas, the owner. "Are you okay?" Sophia asked while they organized materials for the presentation. "You seem tense." "I'm fine," Helena replied automatically, adjusting the projection for the third time. Sophia gave her a skeptical look. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England." "Come on, Helena. We've been friends for 20 years. I know when something's bothering you." Helena sighed, abandoning the pretense. "It's complicated, Sophia. When I reunited with Lucas, I thought it would be easy to keep everything strictly professional. After all, he left, never gave news again, moved on with his life. I did too. But then..." "You discovered the letters were intercepted," Sophia completed. Helena had shared this revelation with her friend days before. "It changes everything and nothing at the same time," Helena confessed. "It changes the narrative I built over the years, about him forgetting me easily. But it doesn't change the fact that he has a life, is probably engaged to that perfect woman, and I..." "And you still have feelings for him," Sophia concluded. Helena opened her mouth to protest, but was interrupted by the arrival of the mayor and his assistant. Soon after, Lucas entered, accompanied not by Camilla, but by a man in a suit whom Helena presumed to be his lawyer or assistant. The presentation went smoothly. Helena explained the project in detail, highlighting how the restoration would preserve historical elements while adapting the space for its new cultural purpose. Lucas asked pertinent questions, demonstrating surprising knowledge about historical architecture. The mayor seemed delighted with everything, especially with the prospect of a new tourist attraction for the city. "I disagree with the approach for the East Wing," Lucas commented at one point. "Those rooms have original 19th century wood panels. Replacing them, even partially, would be an irreparable loss." Helena felt her face heat up. She wasn't used to being questioned publicly. "The panels are severely damaged by humidity," she countered. "Preserving all of them would mean an exorbitant cost and a structural risk." "Cost isn't a problem," Lucas insisted. "I'd rather spend more and preserve complete historical integrity." What followed was a heated technical debate, with both passionately defending their viewpoints. Sophia watched with a poorly disguised smile, while the mayor seemed increasingly uncomfortable with the confrontation. "Perhaps we can find a middle ground," the mayor finally suggested. "Why don't you two revisit this specific part of the project together?" Thus, it was decided that Helena and Lucas would make a new visit to the mansion the following week, specifically to assess the situation of the panels in the East Wing. The tension between them was palpable when the meeting ended. "Sorry if I was too forceful," Lucas said when they were momentarily alone in the room. "That wing was where my grandparents' room was. It has sentimental value." Helena felt her irritation diminish. "You could have mentioned that before," she observed, "instead of making me look incompetent in front of the mayor." "You could never look incompetent," Lucas replied with a small smile. "You impressed them, Helena. Me too." Before she could respond, Lucas's assistant called him, reminding him of another appointment. Helena stayed behind, organizing her materials, with a mixed feeling of irritation and a strange warmth in her chest. Sophia approached, helping to put away the equipment. "What was that?" she asked with an amused tone. What? All that tension, you two were practically sparking. That's called professional disagreement, Sophia, Helena shot back, though she knew there was more to it. If you say so, Sophia shrugged, but her suggestive smile said otherwise. In the days that followed, Helena again immersed herself in work, reviewing the controversial part of the project and seeking solutions that could satisfy Lucas's demands without compromising structural safety. The more she studied the problem, the more she realized he had a valid point. With advanced restoration techniques, it might be possible to preserve more of the original panels than she initially believed. The day of the new visit to the mansion arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze that announced spring's advance. Helena parked her car at the gravel entrance, noticing that Lucas's Jeep was already there. She found him on the porch, talking on the phone with a tense expression. When he saw her, he quickly ended the call. "Good morning," he greeted her, looking tired. "Thank you for coming." "Everything okay?" Helena asked, noticing dark circles under his eyes. Lucas hesitated before answering. "Just business complications. Nothing you need to worry about." They entered the mansion and headed directly to the east wing. Helena explained her new discoveries and the possible restoration techniques that could preserve more of the original panels. Lucas listened attentively, asking occasional questions, but seemed distracted. "This sounds like a great solution," he said finally. "You were right about the structural risk, but I appreciate that you sought alternatives." "It was an interesting challenge," Helena admitted, "and you were right about the historical value of the panels." A comfortable silence settled between them as they examined the details of the carved wood. It was Lucas who broke it. "Remember when we used to hide here during the family's formal parties?" he asked, a slight smile on his lips. "You always said that one day you'd have a house with big windows like these, so light could enter from all sides." Helena smiled at the memory. "And you said you'd build real boats, not just paper ones, and sail around the world." "Childhood dreams," Lucas murmured, his gaze losing itself in the distance. "You never really wanted to take over the family business, did you?" Helena asked softly. Lucas looked up, surprised by her insight. "No," he admitted. "I wanted to study naval engineering, build boats like I said. But my father, he had other plans." "And now?" Helena asked. "Now that he's gone, couldn't you follow your own dreams?" Lucas gave a sad smile. "Some dreams have an expiration date, Helena. Besides, I have responsibilities now. Hundreds of employees depend on me, on my decisions." There was so much resignation in his voice that Helena felt a wave of compassion. Lucas had always been the rich boy, the heir, the one who had everything. But now she realized that in certain aspects he had much less freedom than she had ever had. "It's never too late," she said softly. "To start over, to change direction." Their gazes met, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. There was so much unsaid between them, so many interrupted possibilities, so many paths not taken. The moment was broken by the shrill ring of Lucas's phone. He closed his eyes for a second before answering. "Yes, Camilla, no, I'm still at the mansion. Yes, we're almost finished." Helena discreetly stepped away, giving him privacy, and returned her attention to the measurements she needed to make. When Lucas finished the call, the intimate atmosphere had dissipated. "Sorry about that," he said, putting away his phone. "Where were we?" "I finished what I needed," Helena replied, closing her folder. "I'll incorporate these new observations into the project and send the revised version by the end of the week." She made to leave, but Lucas gently held her arm. "Helena, wait. There's something I need to tell you about the rumors in town." "Rumors?" she asked, confused. "About me having returned only for business," he explained. "It's not the whole truth." Helena's heart involuntarily accelerated. "What do you mean?" Lucas let go of her arm, running his hand through his hair in a nervous gesture. "I came back because," he began, but was interrupted by the sound of a car parking abruptly outside, followed by the slam of a door. Seconds later, high and determined steps echoed through the entrance hall, and Camilla appeared in the room's doorway, breathless and visibly irritated. "Lucas," she exclaimed, "you promised we'd be at lunch with the investors at 2. It's almost 2:30. Lucas checked his watch, seeming genuinely surprised. "I lost track of time," he murmured. "Sorry, Camilla." "Always losing track of time when you're with her," Camilla commented acidly, casting an icy look at Helena. "The investors are waiting, and you know how important they are for the new project." Helena felt uncomfortable, like an intruder in a domestic scene. "I was already leaving," she said, heading to the door. "I'll send the revised project by Friday." "Helena!" Lucas called, but she had already left, determined to get away from that situation as quickly as possible. The rumors in town grew. Helena heard fragments of conversations at the cafe, at the market, at the bookstore. They said that Lucas Mendonça hadn't returned just for business, that there was a personal reason, something deeply rooted in the past. Some speculated it was because of a promise made to his dying father. Others suggested it had to do with an old passion never forgotten. Helena tried to ignore the comments, concentrating on the mansion project and other office work. But it was difficult when her own name began to be mentioned in whispers, when curious glances followed her through the streets of the small town. The Balloon Festival was another traditional event in Valdaceras, marking the beginning of summer. The entire city gathered at the lake shores to release colorful balloons at dusk, creating a spectacle of lights reflected in the water. It was a celebration of hope and new beginnings. Helena almost decided not to go, fearing another encounter with Lucas and Camilla that would only fuel the rumors. But Sofia insisted, dragging her to the lake when the sun began to set. "You can't hide forever," Sofia argued. "Besides, you love the festival. Don't let him steal that from you too." The lake was magnificent, reflecting the sky that gradually tinged with pink and orange. Food and drink stalls spread along the shore, and a small stage housed local musicians playing soft melodies. Children ran with small, colorful balloons, while adults prepared the larger ones for the great moment of collective release. Helena and Sofia strolled among the stalls, tasting snacks and observing the artisans selling miniature balloons and other souvenirs, when someone lightly touched Helena's shoulder. "Hello," Lucas's voice sounded close to her ear. Helena turned, finding him alone, wearing jeans and a dark blue shirt that highlighted his eyes. Without a suit, without Camilla, looking more relaxed than she had seen him since his return. "Hi," she replied, feeling Sofia discreetly step away, giving them privacy. "I thought you wouldn't come," Lucas commented, looking around. "This festival was always your favorite." "It still is," Helena admitted. "The balloons, the lights on the water, it's magical." Lucas smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his eyes. "Remember our pact a long time ago?" Helena felt warmth spread through her chest. The pact. At 14, during the festival, they had promised that, no matter where they were, they would return to the festival every 10 years to meet again. "That was 16 years ago," she murmured. "We missed our first meeting." "Actually, I came," Lucas confessed, surprising her. 6 years ago, you weren't here." Helena blinked, stunned by the revelation. "I was in São Paulo," she explained. "Married." It was Lucas's turn to look surprised. "Married? I didn't know." "It was brief." Helena shrugged. "He was an architect too. I thought we had everything in common, but..." She made a vague gesture with her hand. "Some things can't be built just with good intentions." Lucas nodded, understanding. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." Helena smiled slightly. "And you? Never married?" "No," Lucas replied simply. "I never found someone I wanted to share my life with. Not completely." There was something in his gaze, an intensity that made Helena look away, looking at the lake where the first stars were beginning to reflect. "And Camilla?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Lucas sighed. "Camilla is complicated. Our parents were friends, our businesses are interlinked. She always assumed we would eventually marry, a perfect fusion of families and companies. But I never promised anything." Helena felt inexplicable relief at these words, immediately followed by guilt. She had no right to feel this way about someone else's relationship. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. Lucas came a little closer, his voice almost a whisper. "Because I want you to understand why I came back. It wasn't just for business, or for my father's last wish about the mansion. It was because this place," he made a gesture encompassing the lake, the city in the background, "holds my last moment of true happiness. With you when we were still children, before the adult world interfered." Helena's heart leaped, and she felt her defenses, carefully built over the years, beginning to crumble. "Lucas, You don't need to say anything now," he interrupted her gently. "Just, can we enjoy this moment? Like old times?" At that instant, the master of ceremonies announced the start of the balloon release. Hundreds of people lit the small flames that would heat the air inside the colorful balloons, preparing to release them at the same time. Lucas extended his hand, offering Helena a small blue balloon. "Together?" he asked, an echo of a question asked 16 years before on the same lakeshore. Helena hesitated only for a second before accepting the balloon and the extended hand. Together, she agreed. Side by side, they heated the air in the small balloon, waiting until it was ready to rise. At the signal, everyone released their balloons simultaneously. The sky filled with colorful lights that rose slowly, creating a breathtaking spectacle against the night sky. "Make a wish," Lucas whispered, still holding her hand. Helena closed her eyes, allowing herself, just for that moment, to believe again in magic and possibilities. When she opened them, she found Lucas looking at her with such an open, vulnerable expression that she felt her heart expand in her chest. The balloon lights reflected in the water, creating a mirror of stars. Amid this magical scenery, Lucas slowly leaned toward her. Helena didn't pull back. Their lips met in a soft, hesitant kiss, like a question being asked. And when she responded, deepening the kiss, it was as if 16 years of separation dissolved in a single instant of perfect connection. The sound of clapping and whistles around them brought them back to reality. The kiss had become a spectacle of its own for nearby spectators, who applauded and smiled. Helena felt her face burn with shame, while Lucas smiled, not letting go of her hand. "Looks like now the rumors will have foundation," he commented with a playful smile. Helena couldn't help but laugh, despite the embarrassment. In that moment, under the sky full of colorful balloons, with Lucas's hand firmly holding hers, the rumors seemed the least of her problems. The days that followed the balloon festival were like a dream for Helena. Lucas and she began meeting regularly, rediscovering the friendship they had shared in childhood and exploring the new feelings that bloomed between them. Walks through the city, picnics by the river, long conversations on Helena's porch while watching the sunset. Each moment seemed precious, as if they were recovering lost time. But not everything was rosy. Lucas's family, especially his mother, Elisa, and his older brother Ricardo, didn't look favorably upon the rapprochement. For them, Helena was an inconvenient distraction, perhaps even a gold digger trying to take advantage of the Mendonça fortune. "I don't care what they think," Lucas said one afternoon, as they walked through the now partially restored gardens of the mansion. "I spent too much time living to meet their expectations." "They're your family, Lucas," Helena pondered. "Of course it matters." Lucas stopped, turning to face her. "Do you have any idea how many important decisions in my life were made by them? The school I attended, the college I went to, even where to live and who to date. I'm tired of it." There was so much bitterness in his voice that Helena felt a tightness in her chest. She had always imagined Lucas as privileged, but never considered that privilege sometimes came with invisible shackles. "What changed?" she asked softly. "Why are you willing to face them now?" Lucas looked at the horizon where the sun was beginning to set behind the mountains. "My father's death changed a lot," he explained. "Not just in the companies, but in me. I realized I could spend my whole life trying to be the son he wanted, and it would never be enough. And when he was gone..." Lucas paused, searching for words. "I realized I didn't want to reach the end of my life with the same regrets he had." "What regrets?" "He called me to the hospital a few days before he died," Lucas told, his voice low. "He said his biggest mistake was confusing success with happiness, that he built an empire, but lost the chance to build genuine relationships. He asked me not to make the same mistake." Helena absorbed these words in silence. It was hard to imagine the implacable Roberto Mendonça making such a confession on his deathbed. "And that's why you came back," she concluded. "To rediscover what made you happy before the weight of expectations fell on your shoulders." Lucas smiled, amazed at her insight. "Exactly, and to fulfill the promise I made to him. Transform the mansion into something that would benefit the community, not just the Mendonça family." The restoration work progressed rapidly. Helena personally supervised every detail, ensuring that the balance between historical preservation and modern functionality was maintained. Lucas visited the construction site almost daily, not just to monitor progress, but to see her in action, commanding teams and solving problems with a competence that impressed him more and more. It was during one of these visits that he surprised her with an invitation. "There will be a business dinner tomorrow at the Grand Hotel," he said, as they walked through what would be the future auditorium of the cultural center. "I'd like you to accompany me." Helena stopped taking notes on her clipboard, looking at him with surprise. "A business dinner? Are you sure? Wouldn't it be more appropriate to take Camila?" The mention of Camila made Lucas's face harden slightly. Camilla and I had a frank conversation after the festival, he explained. I made it clear that there's no romantic future for us, although our businesses remain intertwined. It was difficult. She didn't take it well. I imagine, Helena murmured, remembering Camilla's possessive look. Still, I don't know if it would be appropriate for me to go. I'm just the project's architect. You're much more than that, and you know it, Lucas replied, taking her hand. Besides, the investors are interested in the cultural center. Who better to talk about the project than the person who conceived it? Put that way, Helena couldn't refuse. She agreed to accompany him, ignoring the inner voice that told her she was entering dangerous territory. The dinner brought together important businessmen from the region, potential investors for the Mendonca's new projects. Helena wore her best dress, a simple but elegant navy blue model, and pinned her hair in an elaborate bun. Still, she felt out of place entering the Grand Hotel's private salon, where men in suits and women with expensive jewelry talked about mergers and acquisitions. Lucas was stunning in his dark suit, and the way his eyes shone when he saw her enter made all the discomfort worthwhile. He introduced her to each of those present, highlighting her fundamental role in the Cultural Center project. Helena spoke passionately about the restoration, about how they would preserve history while creating a living space for the community. The night was going well until Elisa Mendonca, Lucas's mother, appeared unexpectedly, accompanied by Ricardo. The atmosphere changed instantly. Elisa greeted the guests with studied elegance, but her gaze froze when it landed on Helena. "Miss Martins," she said in a tone that made the title sound like an insult. "What a surprise to find you here." "Mrs. Mendonca," Helena replied, maintaining composure. "It's a pleasure to see you again after so many years." Elisa smiled, a smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. "Lucas didn't mention you would be present tonight. I thought this dinner was to discuss business, not decoration." The veiled insult made Helena's cheeks burn, but before she could respond, Lucas intervened. "Helena is here at my invitation, Mother," he said firmly. "As leader of the restoration project, her presence is fundamental for investors to understand our vision for the cultural center." Elisa narrowed her eyes but maintained the artificial smile. "Of course, dear, always so, dedicated to the family's charitable projects." The rest of the dinner was a succession of tense moments. Elisa made sure to interrupt Helena whenever she began to speak, and Ricardo repeatedly suggested that perhaps it would be better to leave important decisions to business specialists. Lucas defended Helena at every opportunity, which only increased the tension in the air. When they could finally leave, Helena felt emotionally exhausted. "I'm sorry about that," Lucas said as they walked through the hotel garden, seeking a moment of peace before leaving. "My mother can be difficult." "Difficult is a euphemism," Helena replied, trying to smile. "She hates me, Lucas. Always has." Lucas sighed, putting his arm around her shoulders. "She fears what she can't control. And you, Helena Martins, are definitely out of her control." Despite the night's stress, Helena couldn't help but laugh. "Is that a compliment?" "The most sincere one," Lucas confirmed, kissing her softly. The days that followed were a mix of joy and challenges. As their relationship deepened, the obstacles also grew. Lucas's family intensified their interference. Invitations to important events always coincided with moments he had planned to spend with Helena. Urgent documents needed to be reviewed exactly when they had scheduled a dinner. Unexpected visitors appeared when they were alone. Camilla also didn't make things easy. Although she had officially accepted the end of any romantic possibility with Lucas, she still found ways to make herself present, especially at social events where she knew Helena would be. Always stunning, always reminding everyone about the years she had shared with Lucas, always making Helena feel like a temporary intruder in his life. Amid these tensions, Helena received an unexpected proposal. A prestigious architecture firm from a neighboring city offered her a position as director of special projects, with a salary that doubled her current earnings and the chance to work on international-level restorations. "It's an incredible opportunity," Sophia commented when Helena showed her the proposal. "But what about Lucas?" Helena had no answer to that question. Their relationship, although intense, was still recent. They were rediscovering each other, rebuilding a connection that had been brutally interrupted in adolescence. Would it be fair to ask him to adapt his life to her plans? Or would it be better to end it now, before they got too deep into something that might not have a future? The decision weighed on her when she attended the traditional annual boat race, another important event in the small town's calendar. The competition brought together everything from simple boats built by local residents to sophisticated yachts from wealthy vacationers in a celebration of the community's connection to the lake. The day dawned promising, with blue skies and a gentle breeze, perfect for the competition. Helena found Lucas at the marina, where he was adjusting the final details on a small sailboat. "I didn't know you would participate in the race," she commented, surprised. Lucas smiled, that crooked smile that always disarmed her. "There are many things you still don't know about me, Helena Martins," he joked. "This boat belonged to my grandfather. I restored it especially for today." Helena examined the sailboat with expert eyes. It was an old but beautiful vessel, with polished wood and impeccable white sails. The name Hope was painted on the side in elegant golden letters. "It's beautiful," she praised sincerely. "Your grandfather would be proud." "He would love to know I'm sailing again," Lucas commented with a touch of melancholy. "It was he who taught me, you know. Against my father's wishes, who thought sailing was a waste of time." Before they could continue the conversation, the announcer declared that competitors should prepare. Lucas gently touched Helena's face. "Watch," he asked. "Maybe you'll understand some things about me that I was never able to explain with words." The race was exciting. Lucas maneuvered Hope with surprising skill, taking advantage of every wind change, every lake current. It wasn't the fastest or most modern boat, but in his hands it seemed to dance on the waters. Helena watched fascinated, seeing a side of Lucas she didn't know, free, confident, completely in his element. He finished in third place, a notable achievement considering the boat's age and the other competitors' experience. When he returned to the marina, his smile was radiant, his hair tousled by the wind, his eyes shining with a joy that Helena had rarely seen in him since his return. "You were incredible out there," she praised him when he approached. "Thank you for watching," Lucas replied, hugging her despite being wet from the lake water. "I felt like I had become that boy who dreamed of sailing the world again." Helena was about to respond when she noticed dark clouds approaching rapidly. Vale das Serras's weather was known for its sudden changes, especially near the lake. "Looks like a storm is coming," she commented, looking worriedly at the sky. As if to confirm her words, distant thunder echoed, and the wind began to increase. The announcer announced over the sound system that the award ceremony would be postponed and recommended that everyone seek shelter immediately. The rain began suddenly, heavy and merciless. People ran in all directions, seeking protection in cars or nearby establishments. Lucas firmly held Helena's hand. "Come on, I know a place," he shouted to be heard above the rain noise. They ran along the pier until they reached a small wooden shed used to store nautical equipment. Lucas opened the padlock with a key he took from his pocket and pulled Helena inside, closing the door right after. The shed's interior was surprisingly cozy. Old oars decorated the walls, fishing nets hung from the ceiling, and there was a small area with a worn sofa and a low table. "This place has belonged to my family for generations," Lucas explained, running his hand through his wet hair. "My grandfather used to bring me here to tell stories about sailing." Helena looked around, enchanted by the place's atmosphere. The rain beat rhythmically on the roof, creating relaxing music. The smell of old wood and sea breeze filled the air. "It's perfect," she said, taking off her soaked coat. Lucas found towels in a cabinet and offered one to her. "This isn't exactly how I planned our day," he commented with an embarrassed smile, "but I think we'll have to wait for the storm to pass." They settled on the old sofa, listening to the rain and wind outside. Lucas lit a small lantern, since the storm had darkened the sky considerably. "You look so free out there on the lake," Helena commented, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled. "Like you were another person." Lucas looked at her, his green eyes reflecting the lantern's soft light. "That was who I should have been," he said simply, "if I had followed my own path." A silence loaded with meaning settled between them. Helena knew it was time to tell him about the job offer, about the decision she needed to make. "Lucas, I received a job offer," she began, hesitant. "In Altaville, a position as director of special projects." She saw understanding slowly emerge in his eyes. Altaville was 2 hours away. It wasn't that far, but it would mean leaving Vale das Serras, the office with Sophia, the mansion project, and him. "It's a great opportunity," Lucas said finally, his voice neutral. "The salary is double what I earn here, and I would work on international projects, Helena continued, studying his reaction. But it would mean leaving all this behind. Including us? Lucas asked directly. Helena took a deep breath. I don't know if there is an us, Lucas. Not really. Your family hates me. Camilla is always lurking, and sometimes I wonder if we're not just trying to relive something that belongs to the past. Lucas closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the impact of her words. Is that what you think? That we're just stuck in adolescent nostalgia? I don't know what to think, Helena admitted. Everything happened so fast since you returned. Sometimes it seems like a dream, and I'm afraid to wake up and realize I built castles in the air. Lucas approached, taking her hands in his. I have something to show you, he said, standing up and gently pulling her. At the back of the shed, partially covered by a tarp, was what appeared to be a boat project in reduced scale. Lucas removed the tarp, revealing a detailed model of an elegant sailboat, larger and more sophisticated than Hope. What is this? Helena asked, intrigued. My secret project, Lucas replied, a gleam of enthusiasm in his eyes. I've been working on it in recent weeks, whenever I can get some free time. It's the design of a sailboat I intend to build. Helena examined the model, impressed with the level of detail and the design's elegance. It's incredible, Lucas, she said sincerely. But why? Lucas took her hands again, his intense gaze fixed on hers. Because I'm tired of living other people's dreams, he said, his voice firm. I came back to Vale das Serras not just to fulfill my father's last wish or to relive the past. I came back to rediscover who I am, who I always wanted to be. He paused, breathing deeply before continuing. I'm planning to open a small shipyard here, specialized in custom sailboats. It won't be as profitable as the family business, but it will be mine, something I really love. Helena felt a wave of admiration. This was a Lucas she had never known, not the dreamy boy from childhood, nor the resigned businessman who had returned, but a man determined to chart his own course. And what about the family business? She asked. The responsibilities you have? Ricardo always wanted to take control, Lucas explained. I'm gradually transferring my responsibilities to him, keeping only a stake and a seat on the board. My mother isn't happy, of course, but for the first time, I'm not letting that stop me. The revelation left Helena speechless. Lucas was really transforming his life, taking risks on a new path, regardless of the expectations that had always surrounded him. I'm not asking you to stay for my sake, he continued. Your career is important, and I understand the opportunity that Altaville represents. I just want you to know that what I feel for you isn't nostalgia or an attempt to relive the past. It's real, Helena. As real as this boat I'm building, as this new path I'm choosing. The rain continued to fall outside, but seemed softer now. Through the small window of the shed, a ray of sunlight managed to penetrate the clouds, creating a partial rainbow over the lake. I'm scared, Helena admitted, her voice almost a whisper. Of trusting, of believing, of giving myself again. Me too, Lucas confessed. But maybe fear is part of the process. Maybe we need it to value what really matters. He approached, touching her face with delicacy. I don't know what the future holds for us, Helena. I can't promise it will be easy. But I can promise that this time, I'll fight with all my strength for what I believe in, for whom I love. The words penetrated deeply into Helena's heart, tearing down barriers carefully built over the years. On impulse, she kissed him, a kiss that carried all the fears and hopes she couldn't express with words. When they separated, both were breathless, as if they had run an emotional marathon. Helena looked into Lucas's eyes and saw there not just the boy she had known, or the man who had returned, but a promise of what they could build together. I think the rain is passing, she commented, looking through the window where more rays of sunlight were beginning to penetrate. Should we go back? Lucas asked, still holding her close. Helena thought about the decision she needed to make, about the uncertain future that awaited them. But in that moment, something had changed inside her. The fear still existed, but no longer paralyzed her. Let's stay a little longer, she suggested, leaning against his chest. I want to hear more about this boat you're building. Lucas smiled, that smile that lit up his eyes, and began to talk about his project, about the dreams he had resurrected, about the future he imagined. And while the storm moved away outside, something new and strong began to build between them. A foundation more solid than juvenile nostalgia, more resistant than the fears and doubts that surrounded them. Summer advanced with sunny days and starry nights. Helena decided to refuse the Altaville offer, choosing to remain in Vale das Serras. Instead, she and Sofia expanded their office, hiring 2 recently graduated architects and beginning to accept projects in neighboring cities. Work on the Mendonça mansion continued, approaching the final phase. Lucas, in turn, took concrete steps toward his dream. He bought land by the lake, perfect for the small shipyard he planned, and began the process of transferring responsibilities to Ricardo in the family company. As expected, he encountered resistance, especially from his mother, who couldn't understand why her son would abandon a corporate empire for a hobby, as she called it. "She said I'm throwing away my father's legacy," Lucas told Helena after a particularly tense lunch with the family. "As if his legacy were just money and power, not the lessons I learned or the man I became." Helena squeezed his hand in solidarity. She understood better than anyone the weight of family expectations, although hers had been very different. Her mother had always hoped she would marry well and have a comfortable life as someone important's wife, not that she would build an independent career. "You're doing what you believe is right," she reminded him. "With time, they'll understand." Their relationship deepened each day. Helena rediscovered facets of Lucas she had forgotten. His dry sense of humor, his ability to truly listen, his passion for adventure books. And she discovered new characteristics: silent determination, discreet generosity, the ability to admit mistakes and learn from them. Lucas, in turn, marveled at the woman Helena had become. Confident, talented, resilient. Each conversation, each shared moment, each challenge faced together brought them closer, building a connection that went far beyond the adolescent romance they had lived. Not that everything was perfect. Camilla continued to be an uncomfortable presence, especially at social events, where she made sure to mention the old times with Lucas and remind everyone about the business their families shared. Lucas's mother rarely spoke to Helena, and when she did, it was with an icy politeness that barely disguised her contempt. And then came the last great challenge. Lucas received a proposal from a foreign investor interested in financing a massive expansion of the Mendonça family business. The condition: Lucas would need to personally lead the project, which would mean spending at least a year abroad supervising the implementation. "It's a unique opportunity for the company," Lucas explained, as they walked through the mansion's garden, now beautifully restored. "The kind of expansion my father always dreamed of." Helena felt a knot in her stomach. A year away. After they had finally reunited. After everything they had built together in recent months. "And what about the shipyard?" she asked. "Your plans?" Lucas sighed, running his hand through his hair in a gesture Helena now recognized as a sign of his frustration. "They would have to wait. Ricardo isn't ready to take over completely yet, and my mother, well, you know how she is. She sees this as my chance to come to my senses, as she says." Helena stopped walking, turning to face him. "What do you want, Lucas? Not what your family expects, not what the investor offers. What do you, Lucas Mendonça, really want?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Lucas looked at the restored mansion, at the reborn gardens, at the sky that was beginning to tinge with sunset colors. "I want to build something that's truly mine," he answered finally. "Something that comes from the heart, not from a sense of obligation. I want to wake up every morning knowing I'm following my own path, not one that others traced for me." He paused, looking directly into her eyes. "And I want to do all this with you by my side, Helena, if you'll have me." The intensity of his words left her breathless. This was the decisive moment, she realized. Not just for Lucas, but for both of them. The moment to decide if they would have the courage to bet on the future they desired, or if they would let fears and external expectations determine their paths. "You know my answer," she said softly. Lucas smiled, that smile that lit up his eyes and warmed her heart. "I need to hear it anyway." Helena approached, taking his hands in hers. "I want to be by your side, Lucas, no matter what path you choose, as long as it's what you really want." He pulled her into a tight embrace, as if he feared she might disappear at any moment. When they separated, there was a new determination in his eyes. "I'm going to refuse the proposal," he decided. "Ricardo can handle the investor with my guidance from a distance. It's time to prioritize my own dreams." The Lantern Festival marked the height of winter in Vale das Serras. The longest nights of the year were illuminated by thousands of golden lanterns that decorated the streets, creating a magical scenery that attracted visitors from the entire region. It was a celebration of light amid darkness, of hope amid cold. Helena was in her apartment preparing for the festival. She wore a long wine-colored fine wool dress, perfect for the cold night that was announced. Her hair was loose, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. Around her neck, a delicate silver necklace that Lucas had given her as a gift the previous week, for no special occasion, as he had said. The phone rang, and she answered, expecting to hear Lucas's voice confirming where they would meet. Instead, it was Sophia, sounding strangely tense.
Helena, did you see the newspaper today?
No, why? Helena asked, a bad feeling forming in her chest. There's an article about the Mendonça company, the foreign investor. Lucas agreed to personally lead the expansion project. The official announcement was made last night. The world seemed to spin around Helena. It couldn't be true. Lucas had said he would refuse the proposal, that he would prioritize his own dreams. He wouldn't deceive her like that, not after everything they had shared. There must be some mistake, she murmured, more to herself than to Sophia. I'm sorry, Helena, Sophia said softly. There's a photo of him with the investor, signing documents. Camilla is beside him, smiling as if she had won the lottery. Helena hung up the phone mechanically, feeling numb. Why would Lucas do this? Why say one thing and do something completely different? And why hadn't he told her personally? Her cell phone rang. It was Lucas. Helena hesitated before answering, not trusting her voice at that moment. Helena? His voice sounded anxious. We need to talk. Can I come over now? I'm going out, she replied coldly. Meet me at the Central Square at the Lantern Festival at 8. Without waiting for an answer, she hung up. She needed time to process everything, to understand what was happening. And above all, she needed to do it in a public place, where she could maintain composure. The Central Square was dazzling, illuminated by thousands of golden lanterns hanging from invisible wires, creating a ceiling of light over the festival participants. The cold air made people's breath form small clouds, and the aroma of cinnamon and hot wine filled the environment. Helena walked among the food and craft stalls, feeling strangely displaced amid the joy around her. Her heart was heavy with doubts and fears. Had it all been an illusion? Had she allowed herself to believe in promises that Lucas never intended to keep? She saw him before he noticed her. Lucas was standing near the central fountain, wearing a dark coat, his hair slightly tousled by the cold wind. He looked anxious, searching for her among the crowd. Something in his posture, in his expression, didn't match the image of someone who had just betrayed promises and trust. When their gazes finally met, he walked quickly toward her, making his way through the people. Helena, he said, his voice loaded with emotion. I need to explain.
I saw the newspaper, she interrupted him, keeping her voice controlled. Congratulations on the new project. A year abroad will be a great adventure for you.
Lucas frowned, confused. What are you talking about? The official announcement, Helena explained, feeling anger grow. You, the foreign investor, Camilla by your side. The great expansion of Mendonça business that you will personally lead. Understanding arose in Lucas's eyes, followed by something that seemed relief. Helena, that wasn't what it seemed, he said, taking her cold hands in his. Yes, there was a meeting with the investor. Yes, documents were signed, but not for me to lead the project. Then for what? Helena asked, still distrustful. To officially transfer the presidency of Mendonça Companies to Ricardo, Lucas explained. The investor wanted guarantees of leadership continuity before committing the funds. Camilla was there because her family is a minority shareholder. Helena felt the tension begin to leave her body, replaced by confusion. But the article said, the article was planted by my mother, Lucas sighed. She still hopes I'll come to my senses, as she says. She probably thought that if she announced publicly that I would lead the project, I would have no choice but to accept, to avoid embarrassment. So you're not going? Helena asked, hope beginning to reborn. I'm not going anywhere, Lucas confirmed, a smile beginning to form on his lips. Well, except maybe a short trip to finalize the purchase of equipment for the shipyard, but nothing that would keep me away from Vale das Serras, or from you. Helena felt as if an enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Lucas hadn't betrayed her. He hadn't abandoned his dreams or his promises. Why didn't you call me as soon as you saw the article? She asked. I tried, Lucas replied, but you weren't answering, and I wanted to tell you personally, not over the phone.
He suddenly seemed nervous, searching for something in his coat pocket. "Actually, there's something I want to give you." Lucas extended his hand, offering Helena a small object. When she took it, she felt her heart leap. It was a wooden pendant, meticulously carved in the shape of a small boat, hanging on a simple silver chain. "Did you make this?" she asked, delicately touching the small boat. "When I was 12, Lucas confirmed, his voice soft. "It was my first carving project, inspired by the paper boats we used to make. I kept it all these years, as a talisman, a reminder of what really mattered, of who really mattered." Helena looked at the small boat, memories flowing like a gentle river. Afternoons by the water, whispered dreams, promises made with the certainty that only juvenile innocence allows. "It's beautiful," she murmured, feeling tears form in her eyes. "It's yours," Lucas said, helping her put on the necklace. "It always was, just like my heart." Around them, the festival continued. Musicians played traditional melodies. Children ran with small lanterns in their hands. Couples walked arm in arm, enjoying the night's magic. "I know we've had our ups and downs since we reunited," Lucas continued, holding her hands. "I know there will be more challenges ahead. My family won't make things easy, and there will always be people like Camilla trying to interfere. But none of that matters if we're together." Helena looked at him, at the man Lucas had become. No longer the boy who dreamed of escaping, nor the reluctant heir trapped in obligations he hadn't chosen, but someone who had finally found the courage to chart his own path. And on that path, he wanted her by his side. Together, she agreed, feeling a certainty she hadn't experienced in a long time. No matter what comes. Lucas smiled, that smile that always lit up his eyes and warmed her heart. Around them, the crowd began to move toward the lake, where the festival's highlight would happen. The launching of floating lanterns on the water, each one carrying a wish, a hope for the future. "Shall we go?" Lucas invited, offering his arm to her. At the lake shore, they received their lanterns, small structures of paper and wood with a candle in the center. Side by side, they lit the candles and carefully placed the lanterns in the water, watching as the gentle current carried them toward the center of the lake. "Make a wish," Lucas whispered. Helena closed her eyes, but in her heart, she knew she didn't need to ask for anything. Everything she really wanted was already there. The chance to build a future with the man she loved, in her own town, on their own terms. When she opened her eyes, the lake was covered with golden lights dancing on the dark water, like stars fallen from the sky. It was breathtaking. "And now?" she asked, leaning against Lucas's chest as they watched the spectacle. Lucas wrapped her in his arms, keeping her warm against the night's cold. "Now we write our own story," he replied simply, one page at a time. Amid the bright lanterns and soft music, under the winter starry sky, Helena knew that, despite the detours and challenges, destiny had found its way to unite two souls that deep down had never stopped belonging to each other. And as the last lantern disappeared on the horizon, carrying with it the wishes and hopes of hundreds of people, Helena and Lucas remained embraced at the lake shore, not as characters in a nostalgic story, but as authors of a new narrative, one they would write themselves, together, with the indelible ink of rediscovered love and renewed courage. Spring returned to Vale das Serras, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings. The Mendonça mansion, now fully restored, opened its doors as a cultural center, becoming the heart of the community Helena and Lucas had envisioned. The grand opening was attended by the entire town, including several dignitaries from neighboring cities who came to see what had become a model of historical preservation. Helena stood in the main hall, watching families explore the exhibition rooms, children running through corridors that once echoed only with the footsteps of a lonely boy, and elderly residents sharing memories of the mansion's golden days. The space lived and breathed with new purpose while honoring its rich past. "Penny for your thoughts?" Lucas's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him approaching, wearing a simple button-down shirt and jeans, looking more relaxed and content than she had ever seen him. In his hands, he carried 2 cups of coffee from the small cafe they had set up in what used to be the mansion's morning room. "Just thinking about how perfect this feels," Helena said, accepting the warm cup gratefully. "The mansion, the community, us." Lucas smiled, that familiar expression that never failed to make her heart skip a beat. "Speaking of us," he said, suddenly looking nervous, "there's something I want to show you." He led her through the mansion, past the bustling crowds, to a quiet balcony overlooking the lake. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and rose. In the distance, she could see the construction site where Lucas's shipyard was taking shape, its wooden framework rising against the sky like the skeleton of dreams made manifest. "The shipyard's coming along beautifully," Helena observed. "It is," Lucas agreed, "but that's not what I wanted to show you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, weathered piece of paper. Helena recognized it immediately. It was one of their childhood paper boats, carefully preserved and slightly yellowed with age. "I found this in my grandfather's things," Lucas explained. "He must have kept it after one of our river expeditions. There's something written inside that I never noticed before." With gentle fingers, he unfolded the fragile paper. In faded pencil, written in a child's careful handwriting, were the words, "Helena and Lucas, forever and always." Helena's breath caught in her throat. She remembered writing those words, remembered the solemnity with which her 12-year-old self had made that declaration. "I was thinking," Lucas continued, his voice soft but steady, "that maybe it's time we made a new promise, one we can actually keep this time." He set down his coffee cup and, to Helena's amazement, dropped to one knee right there on the balcony, pulling a simple but elegant ring from his pocket. "Helena Martins," he said, his green eyes shining with unshed tears. "You've been the constant star in my sky, even when I lost my way. You've shown me what it means to build something beautiful, to honor the past while creating the future. Will you marry me?" Helena looked down at him. This man who had traveled the world only to discover that home had been waiting for him all along in a small town by a lake. Around them, the sounds of the festival drifted up from below. Laughter, music, the voices of their community celebrating new beginnings. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course, yes." As Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger, Helena realized that some love stories don't end. They just pause, gathering strength and wisdom, waiting for the perfect moment to begin anew. Their paper boat might have sunk in childhood waters, but they had learned to build something stronger, something that could weather any storm. Below them, the lake reflected the first stars of evening, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of children playing echoed the laughter of two young dreamers who had found their way back to each other and forward into forever. If this story touched your heart, share it. Because love, even when interrupted by time or circumstances, always finds a way back home. And perhaps somewhere, someone needs to be reminded of that today.